we need to know how people actually buy. And research says that 81% of B2B buyers buy the first brand that came to mind, which means they met that brand a year ago, or 2 or 5. In that time, they've been exposed to it a little bit, probably not in detail, probably never attended a webinar or anything like that, but they keep hearing from this, they saw snippets of content, and it's automatically on their shortlist. Because you don't want to say, I'm a little bit better than them or a little bit better than them. You want to say, I'm a newcomer and all this mess is kind of wrong and I'm doing it better. The person with the most budget wins. So what we need to do is shake up the industry, become a challenger brand, and really question the norms of the industry. And I really hate the word invest in brand, right? The word invest in it. It sounds expensive. It sounds risky. You can't spend on awareness ads, right? You're a small company. A typical cost of lead in B2B is about $300. And for that, you can get in front of 5,000 customers with an awareness ad. Get people aware about you, and not with, we have 300 beautiful features, but get on their radar way before they're shopping. It's the cheapest way, right? Way before they've analyzed the solution, just with awesome ads that you scroll by and you go, I wonder who that was by. And I often speak to CMOs, VP marketing, and they're like, well, here are the pain points. Like, this person needs to upload this thing to here and synchronize with this. Cool. And then I ask, what do they actually care about as a human? I don't know. They don't know. But a lot of content people are very much click-driven and engagement metrics-driven, so they don't understand the long-term bits of the brand. So that's a very big question that needs to be answered. And I think there's a movement that needs to happen from hiring a designer to hiring almost an art director, a creative director, whose job it is to look at the visual aspect, but with the view of the brand.
You've actually worked for Deloitte, right? So tell me more about
Worked for Accenture as well.
Yeah. So just tell me more about that. So what was working for them like, and how were you building and doing things over there?
I started my career in advertising in some of those big ad agencies that do probably every ad on TV ever in the world, still do. So very much driven by creativity, but at the core of it was a lot of thinking about data and the reality of consumer behavior. So it was my job to obtain data from the client. I'm very good at reading endless spreadsheets. That was how you did it back in the day. You would print them out and go down with a ruler, right, to find anomalies that might be interesting or useful. Interviewing consumers, sitting in focus group, doing ethnographic research, you name it, social research later down the line. And I found that really inspiring because whilst those sounds like sort of back office tasks, the outcome drove real revenue. And I still find it really interesting because a lot of marketing today, especially with the digital tools that are available, it is presumed that a lot of tiny tweaks will lead to growth. But in reality, it's often a one big idea that is very well executed that leads to growth, because that's what actually sticks in people's heads and creates those memories that are needed for somebody to buy your product either today or 2 years down the line. So in the middle, sort of 5-6 years into my career, I realized that I'm doing so much strategic work in terms of understanding of the customer and market opportunity. It was almost frustrating that one would end up making an ad out of it, right? And so we started making, so I could make apps, I could make better products. And so I started being interested in companies that were doing that, right? With a similar focus on understanding the market in a different way in order to create new ventures, new products, etc. And that's how my career drove me to what is now Accenture Song and Deloitte Digital. As you might know, they've been buying up design and product agencies all over the world over the last maybe 10 years. So worked at both of those in that capacity. So innovation strategy, which, to an extent halfway was very similar to thinking about consumer first, but it was far more commercially driven. The number crunching was way more hardcore, identifying opportunities to make somebody spend. You're going to a CEO and you're telling them put millions into this. Of course, you're gonna do some proper management consulting work on it, not just show them an idea. And I enjoy the parts of it that, it got me in front of CEOs and CMOs. It suddenly puts you at the table of somebody who really wants to see your work as part of the driver of the business. And with marketing, what concerned me always is that being agency side, your main client is often head of marketing or parts of the team that are a bit more junior. So you don't really ever break through to those who you want to listen to your ideas. So that was a big learning curve for me and sort of a maturity angles. And from there, I became head of marketing. So that was my previous job before starting on my own. I worked at the biggest paytech in Europe. They launched a payments software as a service solution. And pretty much from zero, we were growing it year on year in sort of a scrappy startup kind of way. But with, I think probably a bit more funding than an average startup would get at that time. So that's me.
Yeah, so that's awesome. So let's just talk about this experience a lot. I think that was next, right?
Yeah.
And so how did you start the process? How did you build the team? What were the initial campaigns that you ran? Just tell us about that experience.
It was very good question. So I came into an organization that was very used to selling physical products, right? So physical payment terminals, they're everywhere. I swiped 3 this morning on the way to buy coffee and dog food, right? So they're unavoidable. You get into the market, it's there. Market is growing also at a very moderate pace because, well, how many terminals can you need, right? There's a finite amount of physical space available for a store. Of course, it's more complex than that, but if you think about it, that's how the world works, right? And if you go back to sort of the pandemic times, just pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, so those 2-3 years, that's when e-commerce obviously became to boom. So suddenly from e-commerce being an afterthought of a solution that they were kind of tinkering with in the background, and it looked a bit old school and product wasn't really doing too much with it. It wasn't a priority. That became something that needed to grow because that was the money maker, right? Everybody was shopping online. So I came in and I had to turn my team, kind of put them into this bubble and say, we don't work for the company that grows 2% a year. We now work for the part of the company that sells this product that grows 200% a year. And we need to act like people who work for a company that grows 200% a year. I mapped all the hockey sticks growths of our competitors. It felt very challenging, to be honest, to go in and change mindset, because it all starts with mindset, daily behaviors, daily habits, how we approach meetings, how we write emails, decisions we made, decisions that they can make, the team can make independently. It all starts with mindset, right? And a certain level of accountability and empowerment and a balance between the two. And I found that you can often pivot people. Even if you think that, well, this is not going to be the greatest digital marketer that has ever lived. This ain't a growth hacker. You can always dig into people's personality and find something where they can be extremely useful to the organization and then really thrive just being who they are. So that's, as a leader, that has always been my passion, to see past the job title and be like, yeah, but what are you really like? And I ended up having this person who, the kind of person who came to me in September and said, Diana, we need to start thinking about Christmas gifts for our partners. And Diana is not that person. As you can imagine, that's not my strength. Or somebody who can really, talk people into giving you case studies of your product. Not, well, they don't want to. You take 7 meetings, you establish reports, and 3 months down the line, you bring me those quantified case studies. And, I think that was a very interesting experience, because it's so simple to focus on what people lack, but you have to really dig and see what do they bring if you let them shine in their own bit. But that's just one example of changes in the team. There was quite a lot that needed to change in terms of ways of working, obviously. But the biggest thing was establishing this product brand as a challenger brand, kind of internally among the marketing team, the sales team. I want to say the product team, but I'm not sure how far they were leaning into the strategy. They just kind of look at stuff and say, that kind of looks cool, or this doesn't, right? But also the higher ups, the CEO who hired me, etc. And with that comes this understanding that we have competitors like the level of Stripe in the US. By the way, maybe cut it out, but do you hear my earring hitting my ear?
No.
No?
No, no.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Because I do, and I'm like, this is maybe terrible in the recording. No.
No.
So it was obvious that a lot of our competitors were getting venture capital money. Across Europe, in the US, everybody was going into the Nordics, some in the Nordics. I mean, I'm in Sweden, Klarna is a huge brand, and they're from here, and they're the default choice. They're everywhere. And we didn't have that money, right? We were spinning out of a big organization into our own unit, definitely with, with not a bad marketing budget, but not that amount of VC money to grow this, at this level anyway. And so it was realizing and telling the company internally that we can't just do the same stuff. We have to outsmart the competition, right? So performance ads, they will kill us on it. SEO, I have 2 people writing content, they have 20 people writing content, right? We will never outdo them on the things that are rationally recommended, sort of as a best practice. The person with the most budget wins. So what we need to do is shake up the industry, become a challenger brand, and really question the norms of the industry. And the entire strategy was built not only on, payments. Who cares about payments, right? There was a payment SaaS solution, but finding out, well, why does nobody care about it? How can we make people appreciate something about it so that it actually has credible value? And explaining that with very simple language, no buzzwords, different tone of voice, a level of playfulness in our visualization, in our copywriting, in every language that we did, so that a consumer or a prospect would see what we did and go, oh, and this is a quote from a consumer test, a current consumer of our product for 2 years told me at a test, I didn't know I was already paying for this. For the first time, I actually understand the features that are already in my package. It's kind of embarrassing. And I think it tells me about the state of B2B marketing today, because a lot of it is product marketing, but not very good. If somebody, your current consumer, doesn't understand what it is that they're paying for. So I have a whole thing about challenger brands. That's what I focus on right now with a lot of my clients, because they tend to be, somebody early stage-ish, worked up to Series B so far, but all of their competition is, Oracle could enter and kill them in a day. Adobe could enter and kill them. Google could enter and kill them in a day. So they are the small player in their own category. So the challenger brand methodology, I have loads of examples to give you, including that campaign in more detail.
Yeah, so let's just talk about this. So you need to build. So what you were suggesting is like you build a differentiated brand, and it stands out from the competition. So just what are the elements which build that? And let's just get deeper into those examples also.
Very good. Yeah. I think I'll just tell you the story of what I was part of, because it's probably, it's less confidential than those of my clients. Right? I can actually reveal this one. So, for example, you're working in payments, right? Possibly the least exciting territory. It's a payment plugin. You put it in your e-commerce store, it works. Nobody cares, right? The only reason people care if it breaks down, right? That's when they come to you and they're angry. So you're pretty much lost the client by this point in time. So there's very little agency the provider really has, right? So your only opportunity is if your competitor messed up, which, obviously we captured. We found a list of customers that currently use our competitor in their tech stack, and we ran ads against them the day after Black Friday, because that is the biggest day of the year, well, apart from pre-Christmas rush for e-commerce. And so if somebody messed up, if their payment provider messed up, there's no forgiveness, right? So very easy audience to just grab and say, hey, come to us, we'll give you a check of your checkout, right? A health check of your checkout, what's working, what's not. And in that way, we passively educate them and passively sell to them our solution. But if we go to that's tactics, right? But let's go to the bigger brand idea. So nobody cares about payments. But if you get really nerdy about it, and I did, all the tiny UX tweaks on your payment window, the color of the button, the kind of choices that you make in the drop-down menu, how quickly or slowly you can enter the details, how secure it feels with the design, actually have a dramatic impact on conversion rate. And that might sound a bit fluffy, but if I were to tell you in Sweden, the average conversion rate for an e-commerce store is 1%. Getting it to 1.5 is pretty nice.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
the thing that I was like, wait, this nerdy tool, which we don't appreciate as consumers, actually drives massive business results. That's very, very interesting. It's like the little hack that nobody thinks about. And our competitors try to kind of talk about conversion rates. They're like, well, with this tool, we grew from 4 till 6%. And then I realized the customers thought 4 is low, 6 is still low. So that's rubbish. They were really bad at understanding percentages of percentages. It's only when I started saying, from 4 to 6, we grow your business 50%. They were like, oh my God, let me check the bookkeeping. And I'm like, do. Because I'm right. Most of our case studies were 20 to 30% growth of the business. And then I was like, this is juicy. Let's do some research. So I sat in front of, 10 people, and I told them the story. And then I said, so imagine you're a store owner. And I asked you, you have to grow your business 20% next year. And I asked you, what would you do? And every single one almost said, well, I'm going to expand range, spend more on Facebook ads, lower costs, etc. But very few were able to connect it with this specific part of tech stack. So I was like, that's an insight, right? It's an obvious, but it leads to this aha moment, right? Which is what we do with B2C brands. If you look at an ad, you're like, that's clever or funny, because there's this aha moment, right? And I realized that we can have a campaign. We can have a campaign that talks to the audience in a different way, instead of talking about percentages and nobody understands, right? we spoke to the audience with the line, hustle less and sell more, because that's the ultimate hack, right? Unfortunately, I tested the word hack. People don't like it in payments, because payments are all about security, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that died real quick. But the word hustle came up. We're doing research, and I can talk about it more later, on Instagram, going into communities of people who are e-commerce store owners, and they're all tearing their hair out, or they're gray-haired. But their reality is, it's COVID, they're working from home, they're packing a box, nursing a baby, and doing a support call at the same time. Hustle is the definition of their life. So with the line, hustle less and sell more, we grabbed their attention even when they weren't thinking about payments, because we became the smart thing to do in order to grow their store, right? And that's the kind of thing that that resonates. Also, just saying sell more with us, it's everybody's doing it, right? It doesn't, it's a generic claim. So you win on this empathy with the hustle word, and that's when people really start taking notice. And with that, we obviously looked at a different way to visualize the brand. The product name was Easy, works very well with hustle less, sell more. Easy takes you into this chill space. We did an event with little sun loungers, right? With a relaxation, right? And peacefulness. And that's something that this group of people, the audience, was really missing, these business owners. So we created a whole brand world around this territory, creative territory. But the initial idea was very much driven by me sitting there going, 1%. 1%. And who cares about payments? Nobody cares about payments. But this is my job.
Yeah. So this is very interesting. But so let's just look at from an early stage startup now. Okay, so they just maybe have some money, and they themselves are hustling at the moment, and then you're saying, okay, build the brand, but do they spend on brand? Do they go towards the demand gen? What's the strategy for the early stage startup?
I have to be honest. Early in my books, the early stage startup, that let's just say that there is product market fit, right? Let's say that it's it has the right product and it has some certainty about it. As soon as that's done, they need to be starting to build a brand. And I really hate the word invest in brand, right? The word invest in it, because I'm investing into the stock market or whatever, right? That's it sounds expensive, it sounds risky, and brand investment is not risky. Oftentimes, it's not even a spend. It often doesn't involve a budget. And I'll tell you why. This is my whole sort of business. I'm trying to bring it to early stage startups, because to be honest, that's crucial for their survival long term. selling with a brand is so much easier than spending money on performance ads, right? And so I can show you the process later as well if you want, the pretty slides and all that. But I think it's easier if I just explain it. So one thing that they need to start with is positioning themselves well. And I don't mean it in a product marketing-y type way, where there are small differences in features and we're a little bit better, a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper, or all in one. No, that's all very nice. But I found that when it comes to technology startups, B2B or B2C, real differentiation on features is not possible. I actually did that. I sat down and I mapped roadmaps of 5 of our competitors, like on a scale. Plus minus 1/4, it was all the same, right? Because you can track them, they do a press release. And internally, the culture was, well, we are so special and our product is the best. But when you zoom out, it takes, you have to calm down the ego when you do this exercise. As soon as you zoom out, you see they're all running in the same direction, just at a different cadence. And if you're going to change the message every 3 months, you're not going to build any memories with customers because you're just changing, right? Moreover, sales cycle is more than 3 months. So you're not going to be chosen for the feature. Like the maths does not add up, And so they don't have a choice but to really build a brand in order to win. So what I do is brand positioning is something I'm doing in 2-hour workshops with early stage startups because I want to make it accessible. It's fairly low price. We talk about the behavior of challenger brand, and that behavior is undermining industry norms. Because you don't want to say, I'm a little bit better than them or a little bit better than them. You want to say, I'm a newcomer and all this mess is kind of wrong and I'm doing it better. So you want to really figure out what all this mess, all the norms are. It's not pain points of your customers. It's what is taken for granted in the industry. So we do a little bit of research about that, obviously news, some research on what your ideal customer thinks, but oftentimes it's already in the head. It just needs pulling out. I can give you an example with a recent client of mine. People seem to like this one because weirdly, people from all kinds of industries relate to it. So it was working with AI language learning models, RAG, and other abbreviations that I know surprisingly well right now. And they asked me, well, there's a bunch of consultancies. Accenture does this, then there are teams in-house that do this, then there are SaaS companies that kind of do bits of our solution and shit. How do we stand out? And then I started looking and I realized that there's I do this chart, very management consulting of me for the top right. Right? What are the norms that are uncomfortable? And one of them is that everybody's talking. Everybody goes to a conference and talks about the future of AI. Everybody can write a 30-page report, which is probably written by AI, and act like a thought leader. But there are actually very few professionals that actually execute and put stuff into production, that have delivered a use case or an entire product that's built on their code, which is the core of it. Not a support function, but the core of it. And that's something that we thought these guys have done it. They've been in this industry. One of the lines I wrote, we've been in big data since it was little, right? Because it's about 20 years of experience each, right? So we were able to say, no, we are the real deal because we actually put stuff into production. So that was one of those lines. And the other line was that people tend to talk about AI, that's something that happens in the future, this sort of unleashed potential, almost mysterious and magical, right? It will come eventually someday. And these guys said, actually, the future is about 2 weeks away. We can give you a proof of concept in 2 weeks. So you don't need to keep talking about a 2-year engagement. You can see the first outputs of how it works in 2 weeks. And then we arrived to this solution where they are the doers and they can get it done today, right? So the line we ended up with, get AI done already. And that's their tone of voice. They wanted to be provocative, a bit pushy, quite sassy in it. And that's why we went with the already. We debated that a little bit. And it kind of latches on to the feeling that a lot of their prospective customers have when they go shopping for a helper of some kind, right? In this space, which is, the CEO told me to do something with AI. That's the brief. And I'm chief information officer, or chief technology officer, or chief transformation officer. Do something with AI. The whole company is saying, wow, this is going to be amazing. I have no clue what is possible, what my current data management system really is made of and can handle in terms of pushing it in a more advanced extent. and I really need to shine. My job depends on it, right? So it's like a pressure cooker, right? You need a solution. So of course you want to go for somebody who will tell you very fast, get it done today already. We are with you. And from there, this took us, this is a 2-hour workshop with a bit of prep for me in advance. So then we do a 2-hour workshop to arrive to that and approve that. Using that, we then actually rewrite their website, because the messaging hierarchy is kind of done. Every single thing that they can offer that their competitors can't, or a lot of brandy proof points, which is about ways of working, which is about their personality, which is, been doing big data since it was little type claims, that goes on the website, which makes them completely stand out from their competition. And from there, you go into another sort of second wave, which is working on a campaign. And before I tell you what the sort of methodology for that is, because a lot of it is my 15 years of experience, that's the real methodology. Sure, I have some frameworks, but it's just how the brain works. This is a fairly small company, and common myths would tell you can't spend on awareness ads, right? You're a small company. But whenever I actually ask people, how much are awareness ads? Do you know how much are awareness ads? People don't. They just assume it's, I don't know, millions or something like that. But what I do is I do some mathematics typically with people. A typical cost per lead in B2B is about $300. I don't know if you're finding it as well, $250, $500, it depends. Quality of lead is also a big question. And for that, you can get in front of 5,000 customers with an awareness ad. For the cost of one terrible lead, you can be in front of 5,000 of your customers on LinkedIn. That's the cost. That's how much it actually costs, or how little it actually costs. So it's very affordable if you do it right. And LinkedIn actually tells everybody, if you don't think our ads are working, then it's because you think they're expensive, because you're making us do all the work of finding you the right prospect. If you actually invest in awareness with good creative, they'll come to you and it will be way cheaper. LinkedIn is putting that out in their knowledge hub as publicly available sort of recommendations, just nobody's listening. So that's what I would say even a small company needs to do. You don't need a TV ad. You need a bunch of banner ads with really tight copy, right? Like the few things that I've said to you before that stick in your head because they're kind of funny, interesting, creative, right? And that's what makes you be open to cold outreach from that company, or make you prefer them emotionally if you need a solution like that, right? I can trust these guys. They are straightforward. They're direct. They won't mess me about with pointless things, right?
Yeah, so one or two things. So one of the things can be, and we just take this example, okay, and they say, okay, CIOs and all of those, they're just not on LinkedIn. They will never read those. They will never leave their contact details on LinkedIn and will contact you. So how do you handle that part? Do you think that, okay, no, we don't get to the lead with this kind of audience, we just maybe accelerate the deals or do something of that? So how do you think about building those campaigns?
Every company I have worked with, whether I like it or not is secondary, but that's the rules of the business, has cold outreach. I think you'll agree. And if we think about a marketing funnel, I see cold outreach as bottom of the funnel. So cold outreach is doing the same function as your typical performance marketing of fill in this form, become a lead, download our webinar, become a lead, right? You're achieving the same thing. You're mass hitting people and trying to convert someone with cold outreach, which is, free. There's no media spend attached to that. So even if, like you're saying, CIOs aren't really like spending days and nights on LinkedIn to see your ads, even if they see it once, even if somebody sees it, thinks it's exciting and sends it to them, which happens if creative is good, it happens with the ads of my client, then they are more likely to open whatever cold outreach you send. It's a very simple sort of, this is anecdotal from somebody I worked with. It goes from these people are spamming me to, that was a fun ad. Yeah. Okay, let's just, I know you're not going to be harassing me. Let's just talk on the call. You seem fun. Yeah, maybe in a year I'll need your services, which is something, right? So what I track is open rates of emails, of cold emails, and click-through rates. Because that tells me that the campaign worked, because some awareness ads, which are cheap, are running. in the background.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of not a common thing that B2B does. I think when it goes to series sort of B upwards, they're already too set in their ways of doing things and how the department is structured and their beliefs to really kind of get on board with this. But smaller companies are willing, as long as their list is good, because you can't control the quality of the list. They need to have a good list, and a lot of lists are bad.
A lot of lists are bad, or maybe the signals are bad. Maybe the lists are good. I mean, you don't have the right signals, right?
Well, those lists are even worse. The ones that are based on engagement. I think we need to also sort of, one thing that I promote is that we need to know how people actually buy. And research says that 81% of B2B buyers buy the first brand that came to mind, which means they met that brand a year ago, or 2 or 5. In that time, they've been exposed to it a little bit. Probably not in detail, probably never attended a webinar or anything like that, but they keep hearing from this. They saw snippets of content, and it's automatically on their shortlist, right? So on the shortlist is going to be Oracle, Adobe type forever, right? Just as a reliable choice. Nobody ever gets fired for going for a big player. It's not the smartest, but it's the default. And 1 or 2 that are memorable. So you got to be memorable, right? Then you do due diligence, you go on the website, you look, they run webinars, they do have some thought leadership, some credibility building content, right? But your decision to get them in the top 3 was based on something that happened a prolonged period of time ago. So that's why I'm sort of quite skeptical about intent signals, because you don't know if that intent means that they're going to buy tomorrow, in 2 years, or their boss is about to get fired, or the new boss will decide to change the tech stack, or if they're trying to over deliver in their analysis to prove to their boss that this is the best solution, that they didn't mess up 2 years ago when championing it. There's a lot. We had, I can't say out loud how much money we spent on a thought leadership in the previous company. I sort of inherited it, annual thought leadership budget with an annual research done by Kantar, very expensive, 7 markets. And half the downloads came from people who were students, journalists, business analysts. It's about how people buy online. So that's it's not even talking about intent signal. We didn't market to them, but they found us. So it's very tricky.
So in terms of, let's just go. Okay, so there is an awareness layer that we have talked about. Okay, yes, the awareness layer has to be there. But you have this IDA model, and what do you suggest then? Do you go deeper in the funnel, or is it like the cold outreach guys will take care of it? So what would be your ideal kind of a LinkedIn campaign strategy?
Okay, well, if we go back to best practice, which again, some marketers try to guess it, which puzzles me, because scientists have analyzed hundreds of thousands of companies, B2C and B2B, across every business stage and every vertical, to give us a recommendation of a good spend of performance versus brand. And it's usually brand to performance between 50-50 and 60-40, right? Let's say 50-50 for ease. I would say that we need to run this spend. Right now, brand gets, awareness as maybe getting 15% if I'm being very generous, especially from B2B marketers. I think B2C brands are doing a little bit better. So there's a long way to go. So, you have to, the way I like to think about it, you have to grow the tree to shake the tree. You want the apples, grow the tree. Get people aware about you, and not with, we have 300 beautiful features, but get on their radar way before they're shopping. It's the cheapest way, right? Way before they've analyzed the solution, just with awesome ads that you scroll by and you go, I wonder who that was by. Okay, all right, they're in HR technology, they're in customer experience technology. Suddenly you're on that 81% list, right? It's as simple as that. So let's say 50-50 brand and performance. I would support it with content that is a little bit unobvious. A lot of B2B content, is SEO blog posts about the same things as the competition. Some thought leadership that lacks personality. So anybody could have published it. lacks an edge in terms of, well, why is it from your brand? How does it link to what you're offering? They're sort of category level claims. That's what I see a lot in content. So it's not actually building brands. So I would fine tune that. And when it comes to cold outreach, I mean, you and I are getting these AI messages, right? It makes me rage. Sometimes I report them. I am that person that reports it, right? But you can write things with flair if you have an understanding of what kind of brand you have, what your positioning is in a tight way, and have a tone of voice that you've agreed on. So if you imagine, if the line is get AI done already, can be the opener isn't, hey, do you need some work done? Are you a CDO? No, it's going to be, hey, we know what it's like to be stuck procrastinating. That's pretty annoying, isn't it? Right? You can be more conversational. It's like, just so you know, we're offering this. We think you might need us in the future, but we're not going to sell to you. Here's our actual LLM model that is our demo, right? Because this is how this company works. So you have to bring it all to the surface and even pepper it across cold outreach. You have to interest people into reading it, right? So once you fix the brand, and that's not an investment, I just wanted to repeat, I think it costs as much, maybe less, to do the strategic and creative thinking once, because then you use it forever. And then you pepper it into your content, pepper it into your events, pepper it into your DM. Every event in B2B is called the same, isn't it? Right now, it's something at the forefront of AI, right? If you can give it an edge, it becomes popular, right? I can give you an example with the payments company, right? Hustle less, sell more was the line. It's all about empathizing with these poor struggling people running these e-commerce businesses. They signed up for a beautiful, almost get-rich scheme things, and now they have a bunch of employees, and it's super stressful. And our event concept was retail therapy. Firstly, because it's retail, and second, because they need therapy. Right? So it's a good name, because retail therapy is what you call, a shopping spree. So suddenly you're like, has landed. That's interesting. We should do that. It's memorable. You don't have to say too much if you just say the right words,
Okay, that's awesome. So I guess you're already alluding this to the fact that this rational versus emotional messaging, and maybe the emotional messaging is better. But yeah, just let's talk about that part. Because B2B is supposed to be case studies, white papers, and testimonials, and like all,
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I do believe science, right? So the reason I sort of say emotional is more effective in B2B is because LinkedIn, B2B Institute that studies what works in B2B marketing, has researched this and concluded that emotional messages are more persuasive than rational by a factor of 7. And that might be fairly big difference. And that might feel a bit uncomfortable, but the story is the same in B2C, and we've known that for decades. I remember early in my career, I went to an event where they released this paper. The shame is that they're always quite boring looking papers, but they have groundbreaking data that said they tested in B2C emotional campaigns, rational campaigns, and a bit, the ones that have a bit of both. Emotional performed the best, better than a bit of both. Right? They tested it. There is science, and now we see the same B2B, which I find really exciting because nobody's doing it very well. And that's why sort of the way I think about it is rational is pain points, right? And I often speak to CMOs, VP marketing, and they're like, well, here are the pain points. Like, this person needs to upload this thing to here and synchronize with this. Cool. And then I asked, what do they actually care about as a human? I don't know. They don't know.
Yeah.
And that is very interesting, because those are the real human drivers that will drive you and me, right? It can be, well, marketing and sales are always arguing. Marketing can't get respect from sales, right? Salespeople are all having an existential crisis because, God, what is this job that we're doing? We're always on adrenaline, right? To hit the quote. Right? Customer experience is stuck in the middle, dealing with every bad decision of everybody in the company and taking the anchor, right? And I mean, HR is firing people whilst probably about to lose their job, whilst having to, still maintain corporate morale. What the hell? That is also a terrible situation to be. CEOs have to make big decisions, but if they say one thing wrong, they're going viral. Right? That's what we're seeing. So I just gave you an example of 5 functions across an organization that really bug people. This is the stuff that potentially makes people stay awake at night. Hopefully not. I hope they sleep a little bit better, but that definitely bugs them. And you know how I know all of this? Not because I sat with a bunch of people in customer support for a month doing ethnographic research. I go on a few sources. I go on, first one is social media. There are parody accounts for every profession on Instagram and on TikTok, every single one. They're hysterically funny because when people are frustrated, some people have humor as a coping mechanism. We all kind of do a little bit. So they make content about it because they get support from other people, right? So I've done a post on LinkedIn where I actually list the accounts I go to that people can follow for those insights. You don't need to commission 30 interviews. People tell you. Then I go to anonymous professional communities, not LinkedIn, because everybody's perfect on LinkedIn and is very thrilled about the opportunity and loves their boss. No. There's a community called Fishbowl, which is owned by Glassdoor, the big company, review company. Yeah. And it's anonymous. So all they know is sort of my level and my industry. And therefore, people ask real questions about the problems that they have, right? And get real input from other people. It's completely uncensored. So I know what bugs them. I didn't need to pay for this. And the third thing I do, I go into, this will sound weird, but memes. Again, I'll give you an example. I had a client, they work in customer experience, software as a service. And I had a chat with their, I think it was head of product, and he really wanted me to understand that the whole thing is if customer experience is going up, but they can't tell exactly why, they're still doing their job terribly because they can't take credit, right? That's a big problem with people who work in customer experience. Like maybe people were just in a good mood leaving this review. If you can't tell me that it's because, I don't know, you changed the delivery options or whatever, then you're not doing good. You see how complex it was for me to explain this to you now? I used 10 sentences. I found a meme that explained it in one. It took me 5 minutes, right? It was like a visual of, remember Barbenheimer, like Barbie and Oppenheimer when the 2 movies came out. And I knew it in 1 minute, right? So often that's a great shortcut. So the reason my process works for early stage companies is because I don't go, let me understand your vertical. I'm going to spend a week just digging around your competition, and then we're going to do 30 customer interviews. No, I go, well, firstly, I've worked in B2B and I've worked in plenty of industries over 15 years. And then I do the sources that I've just shown you. Of course, there's news, mainstream media. You'll be surprised that you can find a lot in, I don't know, trashy media, and Wall Street Journal are equally useful. In terms of what are people bugged by. And you can come to a solution within hours, which is a very cost-effective process, because then you position yourself against that norm that people are talking about, the really terrible norm that's bugging them day and night. I can give you more examples, but I feel like I've been talking for so long now.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So with AI, obviously we had this one app, and now there are like multiple apps for every other use case that you can think of. Okay. And so how will the marketing change? Because there was a time when you mentioned like they had 20 SEO writers, now they have two. Will that still be effective down the road as a tactic? So how will AI change this B2B marketing landscape?
That's a really fun question. And I sort of, on the scale of super pro AI will take your jobs because it's genius, and skepticism, I think I sit closer towards the skeptics, simply because I've seen so many people thinking, well, I won't have a job because of AI. And I mean, the bad news, if you write the kind of content that AI can copy, then you probably won't have a job. So I feel very sad for juniors right now, because respectfully, in my career, in the first year and a half, I mean, I had no clue. I was just doing whatever I was told, and only later I started having the confidence to have an original thought and opinion, right? So how do you thrive in this market as a junior is a very big question, because those are your jobs, to do the research, to bring it together, to put together early ideas to track, etc. But to me, that means that humanity and creativity are even more valuable. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I post a few times a week, and I engage with other people's content. And I've started seeing posts written by AI where comments are also written by AI. So now we're all spending, like, my attention is being wasted on rubbish content followed by more rubbish content. And I mean, the irony of this is absolutely insane. I think people will respond even more to personality, humanity, tone of voice, provocation, things like, not dumb provocation for provocation's sake, but hey, here's an original thought. Or I use sarcasm a lot in my posts because I found that that's what works for somebody who looks like I do, right? A sarcastic man might be perceived differently to a sarcastic blonde woman, right? So it's very important to figure out what is your brand, right? And you know, I know that all of the sales, social selling with AI is thriving right now, but every day somebody direct messages me and says, it's not working. What do? We need a brand, right? Is that what you're saying? We need a brand? I was like, yeah, well, nobody's reading your cold emails. Or in my website, I think it's saying your cold emails are getting ice cold response or something like that. Cold-hearted response, right? There is a reason for that. So yes, it can give us more volume, but I would sincerely want marketers to be picky about how they use it. I still use it. I use it for everything. I don't, but my copy is almost never what it gave me. I use it to proofread my emails because sometimes I'm insecure about sound appropriate level of enthusiastic and assertive. You know, I help it write sort of subheadings and listing features in the right order if I need to write that. But it's never made me laugh. It's never made me go, huh, that's a clever way to put it, because it's trained on what has been. Right. And what catches our eyes is what's new. So a marketer is always in the pursuit of a new way of saying it, a clever way of saying, because only then will you pay attention. Right. So I think we should all learn to use AI for our own needs. For example, I'm exploring how some people use it to write LinkedIn posts that don't look like AI, but have their own tone of voice. I haven't really understood if I believe that yet. I have my doubts, but you know, I'm open to it. It's just don't use AI to do your entire job. Then you're really terrible at your job. You know?
So how big of a team does CEO need to have at the moment?
Ooh, CMO or CEO. CEO, I don't know, not my proficiency. CMO. I mean, size depends on the company, right? I've seen, it's really hard to tell because sometimes I see excellent work from brands online, like Comzor, for example, built themselves a huge brand on LinkedIn. I think they're like series something. But I met the founder and he said, no, we're actually a very small team and we're just doing content because we thought it's kind of fun and it caught on and it's now driving more than half of our pipeline. Right? And they're not marketing people. I think there's one or two maybe, right? It's just the team decided that that's the core of their product that they're highlighting with the way they talk, and it works because their tone of voice is hilarious. It's all about dinosaurs. Kid you not. And they are a platform that allows you to somehow get to warmer leads, warmer revenue. So it's all about networking, but not for the numbers, but genuinity, right? And so saying to your audience, DM me, I'll send you a fun fact about dinosaurs, is absolutely crazy, but they have a huge following with that, right? So I don't think numbers matters, and honestly, it's kind of a hard thing for me to answer. But here's one thing that I am sort of wrestling with in my head right now. Obviously, brands, there's so few brand people, brand leaders in tech or in B2B, and I do get the impression, and you know, it's not just my judgment, I've seen them admitted themselves, that they're sort of glorified designer or creative director, if you know what I mean. Right? So it's not really somebody who has background in brand strategy, brand tracking. It's it's not a person who knows how to prove the value of brand. It's a person who knows aesthetics, which is a great skill, which I don't have. So all respect, but but it's not the same, right? That's what prevents them from being taken seriously. And again, it's not just my opinion. They actually told me, because I speak to them, right? I kept hearing it again and again. And so that's one tension. How do you get people who understand brand? Do you say brand and content, because then they have a tangible input or output that they observe? Yeah. But a lot of content people are very much click driven and engagement metrics driven, so they don't understand the long-term bits of the brand. So that's a very big question that needs to be answered. And I don't know if I'm equipped to answer it, because I mean, I'm betting on you need an external consultant to come in, fix stuff for you, and then oversee you bits and bobs and really believe into it, right? Because that's what I'm selling, so I'm biased, right? But another thing that comes up, and so many clients have raised it, they usually have a designer on their team, and might be junior, might be mid-level, because they don't want to pay for a senior designer, but they expect them to do conceptual work, but they are a hands-on designer. So they understand the applications, the tech, the outputs, but they don't necessarily know how to come up with a campaign idea, right? How to do something that fits the brand tone of voice. And I think there's a movement that needs to happen from hiring a designer to hiring almost an art director or creative director, whose job it is to look at the visual aspect, but with the view of the brand. So those two observations that I've just made, to me, it's like that creative bubble, creative/content/brand bubble is very unclear right now. Which is why sometimes maybe people aren't taken sufficiently seriously, right? Even if your job title is misleading, like you're off to a bad start, right?
Yeah. So we almost at the end of it. So recommend, I don't know. So any 3 resources, books, blogs, anything which people want to read, so they can get better at their branding, messaging, and all of that part.
Absolutely. Hold on a sec.
Oh, okay. That's it.
Dropped it. It's okay. Well, I have a newsletter, which is absolutely free. It's called B2B That Made Me Feel Things.
It's okay. That's awesome.
Right? Okay. It's about campaigns that use that sort of emotional messaging, right? That surprised me in some way. And sometimes, in the last edition, I had Salesforce. So it's a big company that has the budget. I think it was Matthew McConaughey in it, and he's an Oscar winner, so that's all expensive. But in the previous edition, I featured Salesforce from 20 years ago, where they had no money, and they staged a stunt outside their competitor's house. They paid actors, and then they got into mainstream media. So it's ideas of companies of all sizes. Some are pre-seed companies that do excellent work without a designer, without a creative director, just because they thought this makes sense, right? So I usually profile 5 to 7 companies and their work, and under each one I write, why does it work? So I use science to back up why it works. And it's a bunch of studies from some of the sources that we've previously covered. It can be an observation about the target audience. It can be about me saying, well, actually, this is questioning the norms of the industry very efficiently. So all these theoretical things that we talk about, I kind of show it in the context of what's actually in the market. So that's free. It's monthly. You can go on my website and sign up. It's at the top of my LinkedIn profile. But I do get this question asked quite a lot. And first, I'm going to give you the boring ones. LinkedIn B2B Knowledge Hub.
Okay.
Did you know this exists? Almost every marketer doesn't know that exists. In it, LinkedIn has taken every bit of science. They've co-sponsored some science with big institute, Ehrenberg Bass Marketing Science Institute, that has written a bunch of effectiveness case studies for B2C and now B2B to give you the truth of what works, right? So nobody has to go and sit there, how much should I invest in brands? 50-50, right? Or I think it's like 55-40, I don't remember. But so they give you all the answers, and just by following them, all the B2B brands would do a lot better, honestly. A lot better, because the answers are there. What example I'm seeing right now is they obviously say, come up with a tagline that is fast, easy, and memorable, like just do it, right? I don't see that. Nobody has that tagline. It's transform and optimize your security systems, consolidation processes, right? Thank you. I have no clue what I just heard. So just going on best practice is a really good piece of advice, and best practice is there. You don't need to buy a course or webinars right there. And that's credible for that segment. For B2C marketers, there's a book called The Long and Short of It, which is, again, scientific backing on marketing science that works. It's published by similar authors using decades of studies, decades of scientific paper on marketing effectiveness. I've co-written one that was submitted into the analysis way back in the early days of my career. Or the easiest way is to, just get a summary of it, right? To understand how marketing actually works. Because B2B haven't read this book. If they had, we'd have heads of brands everywhere. Right? And the third thing, which is really unobvious, is I think it's worth looking at campaigns that go into Cannes Lion, right? The big festival of creativity, or used to be an advertising, now creativity, across all touch points. So it doesn't really matter what media. And it's creative work that was judged to be the most creative and interesting by, yes, judges, but also audience, because to submit a case, you put numbers to your audience. And also there's an element of effectiveness to it, right? So you have to prove that it actually sold a certain amount. And that is usually available, throughout the year. You can look at, hey, this won a Cannes in this category and this is that, and very few marketers do that. There's a section for tech. There's a section for B2B. It's all there. And it's a very enjoyable way to spend time, I tell you that. That's what got me into advertising, right? I was a student going, wow, now it's been 5 hours and I've just looked at a bunch of ads. This is hysterical. I want to make it happen. I want to be like that, right? There's also a bunch of podcasts that are available. The most recent one was, I think it was on CMO Uncensored, and the episode, I think, is called The Cost of Being Dull, where it was calculated how much money is wasted on advertising that doesn't stand out and doesn't get remembered, which in B2B, that's 75% of B2B advertising. It's funny, right? It's terrible, but it's also really funny. So the whole industry is questionable, right? We're going on really weird norms that aren't normal. So there's plenty of resources, but I'm very much pro learning from those who do it, who are science-backed, right? Rather than random people on LinkedIn who write posts for clicks. So I'm not going to recommend a specific person to follow on LinkedIn, because I don't want to be held accountable for their credibility for 5 years to come. But I know that these books and these professionals and these, Institute of Practitioners in Advertising, these are serious bodies, serious scientists who are in this. So that's who I'm going to recommend,
Okay, so that's awesome. So Diana, it was an awesome talk.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Saad. Super nice to meet you. And
have a nice day.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.